the ER wristband she left in my coat. I manage crises for a hospital that pretends it's a cathedral. Officially, I'm Director of Communications and Patient Experience, which means my fingerprints are on every apology we make for biology and billing. My days are statistics in a tie. My nights are the red light on a phone that will not learn mercy. If you've ever seen a statement that said, "out of an abundance of caution," I probably wrote it after 3 cups of coffee and one bad decision. The night this story begins, the snow came down like a confidentiality agreement. Elective procedures had canceled themselves. The lobby echoed in marble vowels. I stood at the admitting desk at 2:11 a.m., waiting to talk a reporter out of publishing a rumor, when she stepped through the automatic doors and turned the air into attention. Her name was Ava on paper, though the city used her husband's name more often. He funds symphonies that play the same 3 emotions, launches initiatives with the humility of a blizzard, lies for a living with a mastery that would look like art if you didn't have to live with it. I knew her the way anyone who reads knows certain paragraphs by heart. She ran a foundation that bought plausibility for men like him. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not alone, not at this hour, not in a camel coat that behaved like a promise. I moved toward her because my job is to move toward the thing that can ruin the morning. "Ms. Halden," I said softly because names are keys. "Are you hurt?" "Not in a way you can triage," she said, breath making little ghosts. "I need to leave something with you, and I need you to keep it alive until I ask for it. 36 hours, maybe less." I turned so admitting couldn't read our mouths. Her hands worked the buttons of her coat like a ritual. When the lapels fell open, she took my jacket by the collar, pulled it toward her with a decisiveness that felt like heat, and slid something under the lining with 2 fingers before anyone in the room could notice the intimacy. My phone vibrated in my pocket at exactly the wrong time. She looked over my shoulder as if reading the caller ID through the shell of my ear. "Tell him you'll call back in 10 with a number he can live with," she said, and I did, because she was right, and because it felt like I had stepped into a script she'd rehearsed without me. "What did you put in my coat?" I asked. She stepped closer. We were almost the same height. The coat at my wrist smelled like rain remembering citrus. An ER wristband, cut off of a man who would prefer the city to believe he was at a fundraiser. Also the admitting label for a John Doe his staff asked you to pretend was. "You're asking me to violate HIPAA," I said, my voice trying on stern and noticing it didn't fit. "I'm asking you to remember what consent actually means," she said. He gave none. He lost blood in a back hallway that belongs to no department and then lost his name in triage. The people who cut the band off asked your staff to file the chart under safety to keep the press blind. I want you to keep the band alive long enough for a reporter who doesn't love his own byline to look at it, and then at the security footage you will pretend not to have. I didn't flinch. That's how you lose with people like her, by showing the flinch too early. Why not take it to the press yourself? "Because the story is about what men get away with when women do their paperwork," she said. "If I hand it over, the story becomes about a marriage instead of a machine. I want the machine." "You're not responsible for his decisions," I said. It was a sentence that had bought me years in other rooms. It sounded cheap here. "I'm responsible for my own," she said, and the last word landed on my throat like a mouth. A gurney squealed past with a patient whose moan was older than any of this. We stepped sideways into the staff corridor that pretends to be private and never is. She took my wrist, pressed my palm flat against the inside of my coat where the lining held the heat of her hand, and guided it to the little plastic oval I could now feel. White, with the hospital's logo, the edges scratchy and innocent. I could be lying, she said. I could be a woman who hates her husband enough to stage an admission and make you a prop, but you know the names on tonight's staffing sheet. You know who's sitting at ED charge. Ask for the safety log at 12:53. Ask who signed the visitor restriction. Ask why no one from the press office got a page. Ask yourself why someone at your switchboard is already routing calls with my husband's name to a memo that says he was at the Philharmonic. The automatic doors breathed. A janitor hummed something with courage in it. I let my palm rest against the band for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and then withdrew my hand like a man choosing whether he is still useful. 36 hours, she said. I will text you a number from a phone you'll never see again. Don't give this to anyone until I ask for it. Not your boss. Not legal. Especially not legal. You think I don't know how to keep something alive, I said. She looked at my face for the first time instead of the shape it made in the room. I think the room forces you to kill things for safety, she said. I want a different verb. She touched my lapel as if smoothing her own future and composed herself back into a woman with a coat. I'm going to sit in your chapel for an hour and let people believe I'm praying, she said. Then I'm going home to pack. What do you want me to say if I get caught with this? I asked. Say I left my number, she said. Say it like a woman you want called back. She walked away without turning, which is how you survive a building that thinks it knows your name. I went to the men's room, which in an old hospital is a sanctuary with tiles older than everyone's vows, and reached under the lining to pull the wristband into my hand. It had the tear in it the scissors make, the sticky residue where it had touched skin. The label sticker was half attached. HLDN J 1253 Triage 3 Safety. I could have put it in a drawer. I put it in my wallet instead, slid between a diner receipt and a card my mother wrote when I took the job, and she wanted me to forgive myself in advance. At 3:07 a.m., ED Charge called me from the back desk. We got questions, she said. I got a safety flag with no risk call, and meter 2 keeps looping because somebody turned off the overhead at triage 3. You know anything? I know everything, I said, which is how you survive nights like this. Do me a favor. Write the safety note the way you want it written the day you testify. If anyone tells you to change a verb, page me. You're not the lawyer, she said. Tonight I am, I said. At 4:12, Legal's Duty Counsel texted. Rumor attached to Halden. Confirm, deny. I wrote, we don't comment on rumor or private medical information. Confirmed, heat. She wrote back a smile, 3 teeth. At 6:01, the morning shift clattered in with iced coffees and judgment. I walked Ava to the chapel because she was right. Rooms like that teach people to mind their business. We did not speak. The stained glass promised mercy to everyone who could pay for it. When she stood, she took my tie in her hand with a touch that would have been a kiss if we were made of simpler material. When this is over, she said, I am going to ask you to play the piano in my sister's living room and tell me a story I can stand to hear twice. You have a sister, I said. She is better than me at leaving, she said. Her couch is louder than your chapel. I don't play, I said. You will, she said. The call came at 10:15 a.m., not from her. A number I recognized from 3 FOIA requests and 2 late-night truths. A reporter who knows how to starve his own ego. You have something that makes an ambulance report read like a confession, he said. Do I owe you further clarity? You owe me restraint, I said. You get the ban when she says so. You're sure she isn't you with a wig, he said. You wish I had better hair, I said. We've been gentle enemies for years. He laughed and said he'd wait because he loves the deep end more than the splash. At noon, my boss buzzed me into his office with the breath of a man who has just learned to hate a noun. Ava Halden is with Risk, he said. She wants the safety log. She says you sent her. You cannot do that. I never sent her, I said. She already knew. Are we treating the hospital as a building for all or for some? Please don't make me philosophical, he said. I haven't eaten. By sunset, I had learned 3 things. 1. The mayor's pack had a line item named wellness, which is a beautiful word for keeping a hospital awake when it wants to sleep. 2. A staffer of her husband's had signed a visitor restriction at 1:06 a.m. without privileges, a thing you can fake if you think people are furniture. 3. The safety note now contained exactly one more sentence than it had in the middle of the night, a sentence that used the word consistent, where a better writer would have used the phrase impossible to reconcile. At midnight, her text flashed like a flare in my pocket. New number, her, I need it back. Him headed to Risk at 8, will try to kill the entry, meet at the herb garden gate. The one with the camera that doesn't work. You told them to fix it last quarter. They didn't. I almost smiled. I put on my coat like a costume and walked the long courtyard. The herb garden is a church for tired lungs, a rectangle of plant intelligence trying to survive fluorescent fatigue. The camera perched above the gate had an LED that promised vigilance and a cable that promised budget cuts. She came out of the shadow like she'd been poured there. No coat. A sweater that made every leaf think about being hands. She reached under my lapel like she'd built me myself and retrieved the band with the kind of care people reserve for small live animals and things that can ruin powerful men. You kept it warm, she said. You kept me honest, I said. For a minute we stood with the band between us like a fragile bridge. Then she slid it into a freezer bag she'd labeled in neat blue with a date and the words "Hold for Emma," which felt like a kiss I probably didn't deserve. She looked at my mouth like a woman who had remembered her age and decided she liked it. No, she said to both of us. I nodded. One of us had to be the adult. I keep that roll in my pocket like a favorite coin. Tomorrow, she said, this becomes a story about a machine, not a marriage. You already wrote that headline, I said. I want the world to read it in a font they can't make fun of, she said. She left in the direction of the city that eats honest women. I stood there and watched my breath decide to be clouds again. 8 o'clock came with an earthquake measured in shoes. Legal arrived with its brightness. Risk arrived with the strange calm of people who anticipate pain as paperwork. Her husband arrived with a smile that makes dentists rich. Ava did not come to the meeting. She didn't need to. The reporter did. He had the wristband in a bag and the safety note in his hand. He had a copy of the visitor restriction with an illegal signature and a transcript of the call I pretended I hadn't provided. He had a haircut that only gets you so far. He had us. We issued a statement, which is a way of saying we told the truth without pretending we were heroic. The pack line got canceled in a public way. The visitor policy got rewritten in a way only 4 people will ever notice. Her husband called donations complicated for the first time in his life. The river breathed. I didn't see her for 3 days. That's normal in my line. A crisis ends and the city forgets its own ribs. On the 4th night, she was sitting at the back of the lobby, in a sweater the color of whatever makes men reasonable. I finished someone to watch over me and took a bow polite enough to be invisible. She stood, slid off the chair in a way that made gravity work harder, and walked toward me like an answer. You can say no, she said, but I would like to put my hand in your coat again, and this time not take anything out. We found the only broom closet that doesn't smell like last March and closed the door without turning on the light. She pressed me into a shadow, and I forgot I'd ever learned press protocol. It wasn't frantic. It was precise. My fingers found the warmth of skin where sweaters end and permission begins. Her mouth taught me that restraint and hunger are not enemies if you give them good verbs. When we stopped, it wasn't because the world demanded it. It was because we wanted to remember how to want again tomorrow. "I'm leaving him," she said into my ear, which is a ridiculous sentence and also the only true one sometimes. "Not for you, for me. If you're near when I do it, I won't be angry." "I can be near," I said, and I have never said anything more adult. She moved into an apartment that rented its light by the hour and turned out to be generous. We did not become a headline. We became a habit that demanded care. Late dinners, hospital coffee made edible with the right liar's additions, laughter in places that had only seen crying. Sometimes she pressed the inside of my wrist where the band had lived and felt for the pulse that had learned her. He survived as men like him do, by mutating into an elder statesman of apology. The hospital survived by turning a policy into a press release. The reporter survived by learning to let his editor kill his favorite lines. The river survived by refusing to applaud when bridges get names. I still write statements that try to make truth palatable. I still lose sleep to nouns. But when I put on my coat for another long night, my fingers slide against a lining that once warmed plastic and skin, and a decision. And I remember that sometimes my job is to keep a thing alive long enough for someone braver to do the part that heals. When Ava texts me a photo of a piano in her sister's living room with a caption that says "Your turn," I put my hands where I said I didn't know how, and I begin. And the room remembers how to be a chapel without lying about it.